Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively taking the Maryland Crab Cake Tour and the Maryland Oyster Tour for our 26th anniversary out on the road in September. You can come down and see us at Fadley's for a delicious crab cake next Friday. We will have scratch-offs in the Maryland Lottery, the Gold Rush Sevens doublers. I'll have the Ravens scratch-offs by then. Also brought to you by our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, keeping my water crystal clear. You got well water, you need them, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, putting Luke out in Owings Mills, and then down to Camden Yards this weekend. My guest is a defending champion and one-time Baltimore sports writer. He has become a legend in Boston for reversing the curse and the Bambino and covering all sorts of sports, and still a part. And it's been a minute since I've had Dan Shaughnessy on. But Dan, before I even begin, your health and how you're doing, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about baseball and on the field and off the field. But since the last time I had you on, we lost someone in the world that I think was a friend of yours, based on the only time I ever had this person on the show, and I know you don't remember this, but at the 1999 Super Bowl in San Diego, it was the Denver. It was 98 Super Bowls. It was 98 Super Bowl 97 season. It was the Denver Green Bay Super Bowl. Bill Walton came onto my set when you were on my set, and you knew each other sort of warmly in some Celtic way. And the only time Bill Walton was ever on my show, you were a part of it, talking about John Wooden. And the day he died, I found the tape and I played it. And I think it was around the time I reached you a couple months ago. But it is good to have you back on. But your voice was on the airways here with I've been doing this 33 years. It's a top 100 all-time piece for me to have spent time with Bill Walton, and you were a part of it. So thanks for making that memory, man.
Well, I appreciate that. We miss him every day, and I still have a lot of. I've recorded some of our conversations and interviews just to have that big booming voice tell you how great you are. He was a beauty, and I can't believe we lost him, and just a huge loss, and just a wonderful man in every way.
He's a guy, and when Clem Florio died here, I had Vinny Perrone from the Washington Post on to eulogize Clem, who I think you knew, right? And he said there was something about his energy that felt like it could never leave. That there's an energy like Jimmy Buffett. I haven't come to terms with Jimmy Buffett's loss yet. I just haven't. Like they're so alive, and Bill Walton was such a spirit of energy for everyone he ever touched. In that 30 minutes with him in San Diego, talking about my Aunt Jane who lived in San Diego, and talking about Ted Williams and you and Celtic championships and Cowens and just Bird, all of that stuff. He just had an energy about him that feels like it'll never leave, you know?
That's true. He loved talking about the Celtics, and I mean, we're almost the same age. He was a year older, but I grew up he was that mystical guy in California and UCLA, and certainly one of the top 3 to 5 college players in the history of the sport, just based on the accomplishments. And then he was kind of a remote, again, mysterious guy with the Clippers, and even Portland when they did win. Then he came to Boston. He was like, we couldn't shut him up. He was just like, he just loved being here, loved playing with Larry Bird, had the 4 little boys, living in Cambridge. He lived it to the fullest here, and he got his last championship. And
he wasn't the greatest player when he got to you, right? He was really on bad wheels and everything, right?
We thought it was over. We thought they were getting nothing, but he managed to be 6th man of the year, and he played 80 games in the 1985-86 season, which in my view is still the greatest NBA team of all time. Front courts, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, Bill Walton, 4 Hall of Famers. They had Dennis Johnson. I mean, they went 50-1 at home, Nestor. I mean, they were just so I'll put them up against anybody. I wrote a book about him, and he titled the book. It was "Wish It Lasted Forever." That's the title of the book, because that's what Bill Walton said about it.
Dan Shaughnessy is our guest. How are you? Before I get to anything other that's important in your relationship with Bill Walton and my 30 minutes with him, how are you? I mean, you've had your own health issues in the last year or two, and it's good to have you on. It's good that you're doing well, man.
Yes, I'm on the road to recovery. I had a quadruple bypass in February, which was sort of unexpected. To not have a heart attack, but they didn't like the blood flow, and it was kind of an emergency situation, and recovery was hard. But I've had, I'm in Boston, man. We got not to rub it in, but we got the greatest medical care in the world, and I was very grateful for that, and starting to get my hand back in, causing trouble covering the Red Sox and the Patriots and Celtics and Bruins, and I managed to get back for the NBA Finals, which was seeing the Celtics get that 18th banner, and looking at them on my wall here, all the front pages from 13 championships in this century for New England. So not to rub it in, but yeah, got it going pretty good here in New England.
Any Baltimore stuff on the wall in there at all? You got
You
anything
know,
in there at all from
there's a
that era?
couple in the closet. I'm so old. I covered Brooks's last day in the big leagues in August of 1977. It's my first year at the Evening Sun, and Brooks, he hit one homer that year off of a left-hander for Cleveland. But anyway, in August they didn't DFA him. They made him bullpen coach, and they needed a spot for Rick Dempsey to come back on the roster. He had broken his hand, and Brooksy graciously stepped aside. They had thanked Brooks Day a few weeks later in a home game against the Red Sox on a Sunday, and that team won 97 games, finished 2.5 out. But in those days, Nestor, you win 97, you go home. Not like that anymore.
Little Nestor was out in section 16 with his dad for Thanks Brooks Day and the Norman Rockwell and the ride around the gravel at Memorial Stadium. So you and I were in the same place at the same time without realizing all these years later. So Dan, I'm going to put this to you because I have now been excommunicated by both of the teams here after 33 years of being a media member here. I have my name's Ness, N-E-S. So I have a thing called column Ness because all I ever really wanted to be was Oscar Madison. My 40th anniversary documentary came out this year, and all I really wanted to be was Stedman or Jackman, in your case, one of your colleagues, and a guy who was like a father to me. Phil was a crazy father to me most of the 1980s, which is why I probably turned out a little wacky because he didn't have any sons. You were a part of this Baltimore thing. You went up to Boston to do your thing there. We don't have real columnists anymore.
Yeah.
And in the case of new ownership and under new ownership here, after whatever the hell that was the last 30 years with the Angelos family, right on down to embarrassing our governor and pretending there's a lease and there wasn't, then screwing over the governor, screwing over people that were in line, making the deal behind everybody's back, throwing it out in January. And now Rubenstein's bought the team. He's got his $1.725 billion under the hood. He's now hiring the Katie Griggs, who Major League Baseball sent out to Seattle. If you're here, or if Junior, Ken Rosenthal, were coming back to be at the Evening Sun, or any of the great Pasquarellis, the great baseball people we had here writing about baseball with this team, I mean, this team's interesting as hell. The minor leagues, the trading deadline, the injuries, the manager, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman. But more than that, the potentiality, little Deepak Chopra I'll drop on you, the pure potentiality of the Orioles brand and a new owner and Cal Ripken still being alive. This would be an interesting time for me to recruit you here to the Banner of the Sun to come down here and be a baseball columnist. Where would you begin from the baseball perspective of what we've been through for 30 years and what you'd be looking for here if you were a columnist?
There's just so much to embrace right now. I mean, I value those old days. I mean, even growing up in New England, I was with the Orioles when I watched them win in '66 against the Dodgers. I mean, I remember that. And that was a big deal, big upset. And I was thinking about them last night. They've only won 3 World Series because they got 70, of course, 83, but overdue for another one. If they make the playoffs, I pledge to get back there and cover. And I would love to. Yeah, I'd like to be around a lot just because, as you say, they've got the tradition. We know all that. Still having some of those names. They've got the ballpark. They've reinvented the way ballparks are built, thanks to Larry Lucchino. And of course, they're having a service for Larry at Fenway Park tomorrow. Janet Marie Smith will be there. I'll see all them tomorrow, and that'll kind of bring a lot of it back. And
well, Larry's everything in Baltimore, right? Like this building here.
Yeah.
You just mentioned the 2 names. Like there is no modern Oriole baseball here without them.
Thank you. Might be time to put him in that Oriole Hall of Fame. I don't know about you, but that seems a little bit of an oversight. So, yeah, I mean, it changed everything. And just, he was all about winning and winning now and urgency and clean ballparks and city ballparks and changing city landscapes and just all those great things, which you guys are still reaping the benefits of that. So, And now you get this young team with all these great players from, from being bad a long time, drafting well, cultivating that. Really happy to see it. And I just hope they get a deep run in the playoffs this year. That was too bad. It was so quick last fall.
Well, I mean, you come at it from the curse of the Bambino era of baseball and free agency and the Red Sox having some money but playing in a limited ballpark, and then the explosion of salaries that really
Yeah.
happened late 90s and ballpark money and suite money and modern media money and cable television money running through 5 or 6 states up in your area where
Yeah.
a serious regional brand, the Red Sox,
Oh yeah.
boy, we're in Baltimore where we were all that 30 years ago. And Peter sat over with me at the barn drinking highballs. There'll never be a team in D.C. Then the team, then we got a team in D.C. We're going to make all the money. We're going to be able to field the team. He's dead now. He's gone. And this is all left to modern money management guys who are, hedge fund dudes who like dancing around and giving out hats and dancing on the bullpen, like all of that. They have enough money to do whatever they want. They can afford Adley Rutschman. They can buy out Scott Boras. They can do all of that. But then there's the question of just where's the business of baseball? The business of baseball's changed in your market from we're really loaded, NESN's great and all that stuff to, oh, cable television fell apart and we have to figure this out too. And Theo's not here anymore and Larry's not here anymore. And, Tito's not, like, all of that's gone and you have to refigure it out. Baseball always has to figure this out on a local level in a way that's not a problem Bob Kraft has with the football franchise right now, even if they only win 4 or 5 games.
Right. I mean, after all these years, I've come down to, I just want my owners to be guys who really love being owners of that team and don't need to make money off that team. If you own the team, your capital gains, whatever, but make this your fun hobby, have fun with it. I mean, I know the Mets haven't won, but I like what Cohen's doing there. I think that's the way to do it. And the guy in Philly, he doesn't care if he makes money year to year. He just wants to win. And you don't always win. It's hard to do, but that should be what it's about, to serve your fans, in my view. So, and Bob Kraft, I make fun of him all the time, but we know he cares about that team. We know he doesn't have a million other teams to worry about or think about or acquiring assets. He's trying to win for the football fans in New England and for himself. I want that owner in every sport, in every town. And we don't have that here in Boston just now.
Well, and again, you are a little more spoiled on the baseball
Yeah.
side. Just we're comparing apples and vegetables, really, when you're talking about Bob Kraft, who, other than him cheating and having a cheating coach and a cheating quarterback, which that's another segment
Yeah,
all
those little
along,
things.
that,
Yeah.
that little things like that. But allegedly, the payroll was the same, that he wasn't promising Tommy another
Yeah.
10 million later for personal services down the line. But football, hockey, and basketball have all managed that the Winnipeg Jets can theoretically compete with the New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins. Baseball's different, and I don't know what this is. And to your point, the Padre owner died trying to keep up. Illich played that game in Detroit a little bit, that you overspend. Peter Angelos bought the Orioles. They said it was 173 million. It wasn't. It was 145 million. It was, and it was 29 million in cash is what he put up to get control of that team 30 years ago. His kid, he's dead. His kids are fighting over 1.7 billion dollars. They made so much money every year off of that television deal the first 10 years. They were just pocketing money that never went near either one of the teams. The poison pill didn't allow them to ever give themselves more money because they would have to give more money to the Nationals. So they lived in all this, and they still made $1.7 billion for screwing the team up for 30 years. Like, to your point, what's another 30, 40 million onto the
Yeah.
payroll every year over 30 years? But I don't know that Rubenstein, a guy who's made all of his money by thinking about nothing but making money, whether he's going to say, well, we'll just have a $180 million payroll. Boston can do that because the math supports it. I don't know. This thing is so depressed. I mean, I had Kurt Badenhausen on from Sportico talking about valuations. The Orioles are the only modern team ever to go backwards in an annual valuation
Yeah.
for 1 year during the plague 5 years ago. But he said it was a bit of a fire sale, that it was depressed franchise in so many ways, because I'm here and I don't know where the money's coming from for baseball regionally. And that does make it harder to compete with the Red Sox, where there's a little bit more built in, and certainly with the Yankees and the Blue Jays in the country, the Orioles have to figure that out. And I think that's the most fascinating part of the next 5 or 10 years from my perspective as a
Sure.
columnist here.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, I just, like I said, you got the good young players, new ownership. I'm all for it, and I look forward to the playoffs, and I hope they figure out all that money stuff for themselves.
How the Red Sox doing?
It's bad, you know. I mean, they have a good core of young players. I mean, and some of them have come to the big leagues now. You know, Rafaela's Rookie of the Year candidate. Casas was on that track, got hurt. He'll be back. The catcher's not bad. Connor Wong, they got him in the bet steal. He's okay. I just think you know, that this kid Abreu in right field, they got in the Houston deal with Vasquez a couple years ago. He's a good player. And Duran has, you know, he was MVP of the All-Star game. He's having a career year. He's 28 years old, so it is his time. And, you know, just a guy hits triples, hits homers, hits doubles, plays every day. He's been a star for them this year. So what they don't have, Nestor, is pitching, and they've not cultivated it. They've not drafted and developed it. It's ongoing. A little bit of a better bump now with Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, Brian Bayo, but they're this year, I mean, they started off great, and the ERA's gone up every month. It's like 9 or 10 for August. They've lost 4 in a row. They're 8-13 since the break. They're 3 behind Kansas City in the wild card. They're 6 games over. They shouldn't even be talking about playoffs. They're, you know, it's a miracle they're not in last place. So good for them. They've gotten overachievement, good management by Alex Cora. Interesting team. You'll see them this weekend. But you know, the ownership has done nothing to help them in a year or so. They signed Luis Giolito in the offseason, which was a lot of money, and then he got hurt right away. They signed the Japanese kid Yoshida 2 years ago. He's been kind of a soft player, and then that's it. They just, if you look, they have 2 players who were released by the White Sox this year on the team that's coming this weekend. Gonzalez, the outfielder, infielder, and one of the pitchers, Barrett or Barnett, I forget his
We
name.
got Jimenez, you know.
I mean,
So
you got 2 guys released by the White Sox, and you're the Boston Red Sox. They are the dumpster divers of all time. They cull the waiver wire for cheap extra guys, and it's just embarrassing.
well, when new ownership comes in and new leadership comes in, and we have all this promise here, and the team's good, I still, when I think of the Red Sox and even think of having you on, I don't want to be flippant, but I'm thinking, what have they done since they let Mookie Betts go out the side door, right, to some degree?
Yeah.
And the notion that here, the fans, and I hear it, they want to fire Brandon Hyde today. Like literally, like like all the craziness, the zealotry of the fandom that I stopped taking phone calls 10 years ago this month, Dan, that I don't get that, but I see it out on the toilet of Twitter. The thought that how ownership is going to behave, and here it's, they got to sign Rutschman. They've got to sign Holiday. They've got to sign Henderson. They've got to sign Burns. You know, and Burns is going to be the first thing that comes up for them, because I don't know how they think, if they're not going to win the World Series this year with Rodriguez and all the injuries they've had with Bradish and Wells and Means, who's long since forgotten about, as well as Bautista last year, that paying for players happens right away for Mr. Rubenstein. Who are you going to pay? Who are you not going to pay? And I think to some degree, the modern Red Sox have been defined by who they didn't pay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's saying goodbye to Betts. It's 100 years later, the Babe Ruth thing, and it's a tragic mistake and bad read. And again, they can afford the player. If you're going to own the Boston Red Sox, you got to pay market value. It's the cost of doing business. And we know they're overpaid. We know that the last 3-4 years of those long contracts are always crap. We understand that. But you got to, if you're in this market and you're charging the prices they pay, and you've got the loyalty of this long fan base, I'm telling you, things just change here. They won 4 World Series in this century, and that's all due credit. That's pretty. No one else has done that, not even the Giants. But something pivoted in 2019, and they have become need to make money every year team, and not supporting the product on the field from above.
Well, I mean, so now we've lived long enough that you come on the show, and we're the ones with
There you go.
promise,
Yeah,
right?
complete. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and year after year, I'd be calling you. We're getting our ass kicked, and no matter what era it was, through all of this, it's smart baseball people and owners who support that. It's imperative in baseball where there really isn't a whole lot of margin for error because of the money. And in football, it's all funny money. Once you stick into a player, whether it's Chris Davis, you're stuck. And if you sign the wrong guy, especially in the wrong market, and we would be that Pittsburgh, Kansas City, these other places where it feels like it falls off a cliff. It never should have fallen off the cliff in Boston, I guess is the way I feel about it.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way, and the capital gains, the exponential value of the team going up every year, that should be enough. This operating in the black year to year, that's baloney in my view. Not if you're the Boston Red Sox. I don't think they get away with that. Not on my watch.
Dan, I'm watching the Major League Baseball Network on trading deadline because it was a big deal around here. It hasn't been for a long time, and they added 8 more players and did all this stuff. But it was amazing to me the early deals. I kept hearing about the threshold, and I'm like, oh, so the Giants are dumping players so that they don't have to pay the sin tax. That's where that's talk about gaming the system. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we are. That's how esoteric it is for fans to try to understand it in my market, where with Angelos, those words were never brought up around here,
Yeah, and it's not the kind of language that I choose to get into. That's not why I became a sports writer. I have no interest in that. I've never learned the second apron in the NBA. I don't plan to. I'm not going to learn the second apron.
What you think of the Olympics, man? I know you're a basketball historian. I'm going to have your compadre Bob Ryan on talk a little bit too. But boy, the Olympics, my wife couldn't. The minute it started, I couldn't get the pad away from her. She's carrying it everywhere, all day, every day. Hey, did you see who won? We won. We won. I'm like, it's 1 in the afternoon. Leave me alone. It doesn't start. Tarico doesn't come on till 8 o'clock. But the Olympics captivated this country in a way that I don't know that I would have seen that coming a month ago.
I love it. It's just always on TV, especially if you're vacationing. You just have it on. If you're coming in from the beach or you're folding laundry or whatever, it's just on. So just keep it on all day, and something for everybody. And we had fencers. We had guys around our vacation who were fencers, and they were telling us what was happening with the fencing. And again, I didn't do a lot of appointment TV on that. I did want to watch the gold medal game on Saturday at 3:30. So we had an issue here because Tatum wasn't playing, and that was kind of a thing. So wanted to see if he'd get in the game, and he did. And of course, getting to see Curry make those shots against France at the end, the 4 and 2 minutes, and the last one of the greatest basketball shots I've ever seen. So that was fun. And we become experts on sports we know nothing about. All that stuff goes on every 4 years. So I've covered 3 of them in person, and they're very refreshing. And it was a great event, and Paris pulled it off. Good for them.
I always love reaching to you because you have this wisdom that cannot be replaced. Certainly, in chasing Earl Weaver around Memorial Stadium back in the 70s as well. Dan Shaughnessy, we were never colleagues. He was at the Evening Sun, but we were colleagues with other colleagues that we've shared. I found this old picture. We had an old guy at the News American who passed away about a month ago, a guy named Rich Petro, who covered racing. And my early bylines in 1984 were on the page 8 where the racing forum was and all that. And I kid Dick Girardi about that all the time up in Philadelphia. But there's just something about that fraternity of old. We have a picture on the wall of about 35 people at this sports. Bernie Miklasz, Jeff Gordon, just John Hawkins, who went on to write at the Golf Mag. Just these legendary people. I miss old newspapers, Dan. And as Eisenberg always says when he comes on, you're not Jerry, John. I had them both on recently. But John always says the golden age of sports writing. That'll always be your calling card, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, we don't sit around baying at the moon wishing it was this or that, or but we do tell old stories, and I'm just happy I got to do it when it was really fun. And it was really fun, and being in Baltimore in 77 into the early 80s, it was never more fun than that, to see the way things unraveled there, unfolded, I should say, there. And people were just so nice to me, and seeing the Orioles really get to 1 million fans a year, and then way north of that, and the young popular team they had, and 90 wins a year, just showing up every year. And end of the year, the team would give you the sheet of paper with all the players' home phone numbers on it in case you wanted to call Brooks during the off season. So, I mean, it was nutty, just so friendly, so great baseball, and Hall of Famers everywhere you looked. And I really cherish that time in my life.
Yeah, I was going to say, what the hell happened? But we all know what happened. Money. Dan Shaughnessy's here. He is still with the Boston Globe, writing the good writings, and back on his feet, feeling great, just in time for the Red Sox to maybe make a playoff run. Hey, look, man, Arizona and Texas look like they stunk last August too. So I don't put it past anybody. If you got a couple of starters,
Sure.
but it has been a really fun summer. Dan, I can't begin to tell you, because I know you came in here when it was crazy and there's 45,000 Red Sox fans running around. To have baseball sort of back again as a
Good.
daily part of the conversation, it's almost like having the Colts back, but that's for another day. We got Joe Flacco for that. Dan, good health. Thank you for always being a good partner to the program. And next time I have you on, we'll talk about the parade that happens here and all that good stuff.
Thanks, Nestor. Enjoyed it. Take
Dan
care.
Shaughnessy of the Boston
Bye-bye.
Globe, defending champion, reversing the curse and feeling a little healthier. The Orioles and the Red Sox getting together this weekend at Camden Yards. I am Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.